I mean, I must say, She Rocks the World is a wonderful organization that does encourage girls to fearlessly use their voice, to be bold, and to fight for the things that they stand for.
Good.
So definitely a wonderful example of somebody who's done that throughout her life. Growing up, did you feel like there were any women who you could look up to, or role models?
That's an interesting question too, because I think about that looking back, and I have to say there are several role models who no one else would know who they are. So when I think about my elementary school life, the first role model I have to say was my mom, who was a school teacher, and she pulled herself up every day and put on her pumps and went out to teach school every day, at the same time taking care of 5 children and having a husband and a family life. So that was probably my first role model. But then I also look back on people like 2 teachers, Mrs. Morris and Miss Harris, who made me know that excellence was expected. I never got an impression from them that I should aim low. I went into their classrooms every day, and the expectation was I should exceed expectations. And I need to figure out where that bar is and jump up over that. And so that was very motivating for me as a girl who didn't hear that outside of some of those classroom experiences. And then in high school, I would say I had the biggest motivator, and it wasn't a woman. It was Mr. Ogletree. Mr. Ogletree was my calculus teacher. And Mr. Ogletree taught me to stand up and think on my feet, because class was at the board, one-on-one, out loud. And so my calculus class, what you never knew when you were going to get called upon, and it was real time at the board every day. And in that class, I learned not only to think on my feet, but to ask questions so that if I didn't understand, I could get clarity from him. And then in there, we also learned to peer coach and help each other. And so in that environment, I learned new skills that I had never been exposed to before being in that class. I later learned a lot of other kids had the same experience with Mr. Ogletree. And I happened to be one of the few girls there. But he didn't treat me any differently than any of the guys. And so I got the random call just like everybody else, and I got chew out just like everybody else, and the motivation just like everybody else to excel. So I would say in my world, there were a few motivators for me who were not public-facing people. But there were other people, like our representative Shirley Chisholm. That was new at the time for me to see a woman of color on television helping to lead our nation. That was important to me to see. I also got a lot of time on television during that window of time, and I saw at that time new faces on TV that I hadn't seen in the past, and so those were kind of just motivating in terms of knowing that there were leaders there. And then later on, over time, we got to see astronauts like Mae Jemison and others, taking on roles in technology and engineering fields that were critical to the advancement of the nation. And those were motivating. I would also finally say that as I started working as a young adult, I got to see leaders in our customer community. I would say officers in the Air Force who happen to be women, leading activities on the other side of the table from a customer perspective. They were very motivating to me because at that time it was new to me to see a leader in that role who happened to be a female taking charge, leading teams, and getting outcomes from many people, like driving outcomes for people, wearing a uniform. And I was highly motivated to do all I could to make our contribution to that effort successful.
And I think that it is so interesting that, your role models are a mix of public figures, but also, people at your schools and your mom, because as high school students, this definitely encourages me to look around through high school at different teachers who have taught me very similar things that yours have as well. So, fascinating.
I'd also just offer to consider you have a great opportunity yourself to motivate other girls. I mean, I think one of the great opportunities we all have, and I have leveraged before, is peer kind of support, peer mentoring, peer support. There's no downside to that, right? Each of you can all do that at any time to help other girls develop their capabilities from an academic perspective, but also to develop their confidence.